Okay, we gotta do a hard set here so that it will stay that way. So now if I change this to say 100, everything will change down here too. Now the reason none of the other stuff is changing is because this is not the formula field anymore. It's plain text. So what I'll do with this is we'll say equals G12. And then equals get CXP. So then the base, comma, level, comma, factor. And then we'll just pull this down. I'm not sure what happened to the data for this. I guess we'll have to reset it. Damn. Oh. Oh my god, okay, I had this problem last night too, trying to figure this out. Excel is such a pain in the arse. Ah. When it comes to just trying to make this stuff work. Edit. Okay. There we go. Kind of, sort of. Oh my god. Let's see. So we have this over here. This is the XP reward. And over here we have the levels. Seems pretty straightforward, but obviously it's not. Oh god. God. Why are those selected for? There. Alright, so we have no data for it now, which is what I want. So first we're going to add Excel, why do you have to be such a pain? Why do you have to be such a pain? Okay, let's actually try creating a new one down here and see if we can get this working properly. Alright, so I got this here. So data select. Okay, that's right. Okay, so it should be that simple. Should be. Being the keyword there. So basically all we just had to do was take that. And then we basically had to edit this. This is supposed to be the series, which is these. Cancel. So it like does it backwards or something. So edit. Oh my god. Edit. This thing could be so much easier to work with. The problem might be is that We're still, maybe it's because it's still referencing the, this is basically still referencing this, which is not a value. Let me see. Equals, let's put a function in here. So, logical? No. Choose columns, formula text. Well, either way, so let's just say this is here now. Change the factor to F2. Alright, and let's say we change the factor to 145. Now I think that this should work. There we go. So eventually what will happen is that it'll have it so that this will like convert this to a number automatically, and then you can just use it here and change these values, not have to worry about doing what I just did there. And you'll be able to see how it changes this graph here. Again, it's just another way of visualizing how things will look in terms of the EXP curves and whatnot on the levels. EXP reward curves. So that's all I'm prepared to show you tonight. I do have some stuff possibly in the UE4, Unreal Engine 4. I don't have it working quite yet, and so I want to wait till I get working before I show it. Go ahead and save this. So that's going to be it for this part of the developer's vlog. What I'll be doing is basically doing the same thing we just did now, but I'll be covering everything in terms of what's been done since the last time. So anything new, basically, that warrants showing off, I'll show off. And we'll do this a couple times, maybe every month until for this update only, up until December, the end of December. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Hi everyone, this is George Williams from Lifeman Productions Squared, and we're back to continue our next little chunk of recording for our 20th developers vlog for Odyssey and Void. So last time we kind of went over everything that I had been working on, kind of share the state of things. Today's going to be a much shorter video, much shorter. Maybe as little as 15 minutes, we'll have to see. Definitely not the 2 or 3 hours, whatever the last one was, part of it was. Haven't done really anything on the game coding or in Unreal Engine, so nothing to show for there. Mainly what we'll be focusing on right now for today is going to be the modding tool and also the Excel sheet thing, whatever you want to call it. The old school modding tool, if you will. It's really it's gonna be the old school future casting, but we'll get into that later. So let's go and just go right into here. So a lot of progress has been made. The query browser is now done. The advanced query browser is done. And the database editor is getting pretty close to where it could be considered done. Still got some things to do for that. It's not entirely functional yet, but for the most part, I'd say it's 60% functional. Futurecast, which is something we'll talk about, is not here yet. Still nothing on the preferences thing. I haven't gotten that dialog put in yet. But let's go ahead and run it and show you how it works now. So as before, everything is working like it was before in here. So you just select you go up to here, load a database. Not sure if I changed this before, but I have now. This will actually open up a file open dialog and load you into whatever directory you set as your save directory to load in a file. This will just load the database file that you indicate in the settings and the preferences. So we'll do that. So this is just same as it was before, loading and things like that. I did add in a new thing here where it's got the table name dot the field name, so that on the advanced query browser it's a lot easier to determine what fields are actually for which table, which we'll see in a second why that's important. So same thing here as before. You just say like field list nothing, conditions nothing, and you'll get all the data from it. So that's basically what this still is. There's no data in there, so nothing will show up. Let's go to CPUs. Yeah, there we go. So same thing as before. Now the advanced query browser, this is different. This is what will allow you to do joins and, well, it's set up just for joins right now. I might make it so that it can do different things later, but have a field list here. We have our selected tables, and you can see it's different from this one. This isn't just a drop-down. This one is what's called a checked list drop-down, or checked item list or something. I'm not exactly sure what it's called. Let me see. Checked box list, maybe. It's called a checked list box. So it's pretty similar to a drop-down, or rather a list like the field list box over here. However, it allows you to select multiple things in it. So it's basically a multi-select list, multi-select drop-down list. So what we can do with this is say, okay, let's say we want to do just for an example, let's do a join between let's use the example I was using before, which was for resources to reprocessing. So here we see our resource field list from the resources table, and then we select reprocessing, and we get those too. So now we have reprocessing and resources in the same list here, so we can see what they are. Now what we do is we go to our field list. Now here's the interesting thing. For this now, I actually have implemented tooltips now instead of having the text in there. So all these here, and all these boxes over on the query browser have tooltips. I'm not sure if I'll do that on the database editor because, I mean, that will be insane. We have to manage all of that for every text. I don't think it'll work with the database editor for doing tooltips for each individual field. But for this one now, you have to do the from table as name with the field list. So we're going to do the t1.id. So this is going to be t1 will be t1.id. ID will be from resources. T1.name. T1.description. There's no description, never mind. Yeah, there's desk. It's desk. It should be description. I'll have to change that name, that field name in resources. T1.sg2. T1.type. T1.stage. T1.tier. And I think the last one's xcost. Base size and xcost. So we'll do base size. And then we want to do T2 dot reprocess units. T2 dot res produced. T2 dot res cost, and T2 dot res production loss. From resources dot as T1. Now for the join, you just do your normal join thing. So you say inner join, and then you say reprocessing as T2 on, then the conditions. So T1 dot ID equals T2 dot res produced. T2 dot res cost, and T2 dot res production loss. For the join, you just do your normal join thing. So you say inner join, and then you say reprocessing as T2 on, then the conditions. So T1 dot ID equals T2 dot res production loss. For the join, you just do your normal join thing. So you say inner join, and then you say reprocessing as T2 on, then the conditions. So T1 dot ID equals T2 dot OID or RID, and then we'll leave our conditions blank for now. Okay, so we got inner join reprocessing as T2 on T1. Alright, I think we might have a... So reprocess units. Res produced. Res cost. Res production. PRD CTIN loss. From resources as T1. Just write resources. Inner join reprocessing as T2 to an sticker query. Damn. You have some sort of issue. I've run into this issue where, for some reason, on this one, the error doesn't necessarily work properly. Error reporting. So crap, where are you? Classes have been messy now. We got so much crap in there. So that's table list. We don't want that. We want query data. So if it's AQB, okay. So let's just set up a, or not there. Oh, maybe this is why. Crap. Do a little bit of real-time debugging / editing here. Else if B is AQB. Label Q state AQB equals, or dot for color. Alright, let's see how that works. So I'm going to check our... Maybe click actually, it was there. Okay, yes, that's fine. Okay, and now I'm going to bring this up because I actually have this over here. I know this is working, but I'm going to check to see... Oh no, it is though. Okay, no wonder, because... okay, yeah. Because it's not RID, it's OID. I was right the first time I said OID. But I just want to check and make sure that, so... Okay, there we go, yeah. Good. Oh, Jesus. Forgot to change that. Fix that. No. What is wrong with you? Reprocess units. No such column. T2 as reprocess units. Let's put the T2 in there. This thing was all kinds of messed up, and I forgot about the problems to fix. There we go. So here, holy crap, that was interesting. So here you see, we now have it working in here instead of in the SQLite's editor or in SQLite Expert. So it has joined the two tables based on the conditions we set. If we do some where conditions now, let's say we only want stage 1 OR, so stage 1 and tier 1 OR, so stage equals 1 and tier equals 1. Rerun the query. Near where syntax. I haven't checked the where conditions on this So I actually had to kind of do this crazy Frankenstein thing to get it to work. Build the query correctly. So AQB, here we go. So if where conditions are, okay, so SQL str and join conditions are not 0. So here, this one. So at this point we should have, I'm just going to put a break right there real quick. And we're going to throw that query back in. Okay, there we go. So select R. Where'd that R come from? That's interesting. So return carriage. Return carriage and a new line. That's why. So SQL str plus equals. So there's a problem with the. I think we pulled in some stuff from TextPad we need to deal with. Continue. So T1, yeah. See, there's like a. Whenever I hit delete just now and nothing came out of there. There was some extra stuff there, I think. Yeah. Now the question is, why is this not adding? And why are we adding? I don't know why I'm adding a space here for. It should just be that way. So stop. Oh. Derp. Crap. Okay. That's why. Okay, so load our database. Alright, so try this again. T1 dot ID, T1 dot name, T1 dot description, T1 dot SG2, T1 dot type, T1 dot stage dot tier, T1 dot base size, T2 dot reprocess units, T2 dot res produced, T2 dot res cost, res production loss from resources as T1. Inner join reprocessing as T2 on T1 dot ID equals T2 dot OID. And where conditions, where stage or T1 dot stage equals 1 and T1 dot tier equals 1. There we go. And so there you go. This is now functioning completely and the way it's supposed to be, and is now bug-free. So now let's talk about the database editor. So this was really interesting for me to try and figure out. Let me actually go ahead and restart this so you kind of are seeing the end result there. I don't want to show that to you just yet. So this was kind of interesting. I had to try and figure out a way to do all this. So what we have is we have a situation where we have multiple multiple fields to consider, and the type of data in the fields to consider. Now, in the case of most of the normal fields, you can just cast them to strings and then cast them back to the values when you're going to put them back in the database. Descriptions, however, and store them in text boxes. Descriptions, however, are huge. You wouldn't be able to store them in a normal text box, so I have a rich text box over here, control here, that I'll put all that in and have scrolling and all that stuff. But when I did that, I had to figure out a way then to handle, one, taking the column names, assigning them to the labels here, and two, then taking the data from each field and assigning it to the actual field controls, while handling, if it's a description, to put it here and not then skip over things and have it not be lining up on the rest of them. So it's pretty interesting trying to figure that out. And trying to figure out how to even handle this at all. So, as you notice, these are inside of a group box, and that's because when you do this, all these controls are then parented, or rather childed, to this group box. I can just go to the group box and then pull out the controls for the group box, and then separate them out by type. If this wasn't here, I'd also then have to figure out how to differentiate these labels and other controls from these labels up here and the query state and these other things. So it would have been a little bit more difficult to do. This way we just have all the controls that are inside of the group box on their own, and then we can say, okay, is this a label? Okay, it goes in our label list. If it's a text box, it goes in the text box list, and then we just handle the desk box, description box, on its own. So how this works is we have a work mode, and what is a work mode? Well, you can click this to find out. So the work mode is basically a setting that tells you tells the tool how to process your actions. So in other words, if you are editing, it's not going to allow you to create new records, for example, because you'll be updating an existing record. So you'll have the ID will be supplied to it, and it'll basically be an update statement instead of an insert statement for when the work mode is set to record editing mode. Now, record creation mode is the opposite. Record creation mode, you are creating a record, so it's going to be an insert statement, and so you won't have access to the ID field, for example. The ID field won't show up in here, and I actually have to code that in. Well, I actually haven't done the creation mode yet, so that's something I'll have to consider that I just thought of right now. And it'll be an insert statement instead of an update statement. So right now, I do have to set this to record editing so things will process correctly, because there is a bool that will be checked for how stuff is loaded. We'll just go to load database now. So since we are automatically setting this up to go to, or we're updating this, the way this is handled is on the selected index change, so it's going to automatically load things in. You can see now the field labels have adjusted the field names, except for this label, which mysteriously has decided not to do what it's supposed to do. Interesting. I'll have to check that out. It looks like yeah, no, it's not. It's off by one again. Damn. Thought I fixed this. So if I go to equipment, it works fine with equipment. No, it doesn't work with equipment. Wow. What the hell? So I had this working before, and now it's not working. I'm not sure why. But it's very interesting, to say the least. Settings. Let's see, settings is working, except the label's not correct. So, description. So I got some work to do on the labeling, I think, and also on some of the stuff. But you kind of see how this works now. I can just set it to whatever, and it'll adjust to it. Again, these will only enable, these text boxes and things will only enable if there's a record down here to select, since there isn't. And what you do is to bring up the next, if you want to change something else in here, you just bring up the next record here and it'll update automatically what is up in here. So it kind of gives you a a way in the data to select something to edit, and then you can edit it without having to say, okay, I want to edit this. So then you say select the record from ID1 from this table to bring the data. Now you just select the row down here in the data grid view, and it'll load the data in for you, which you can then edit, and then use this button to save it. Yeah, I just want to make sure it wasn't back feeding into the table here. So that's where we're at with this. It's actually pretty good progress for 3 days of work, I think. At least I think it's been 3 days since... maybe it's only been 2 days since I did the last recording. I'm not sure. It's the 19th now, whatever day it was before. You can do the math. But for that amount of time, it's been a pretty good amount of work, actually. Now, Futurecast. Futurecast is going to be... I might have mentioned this, I might have not have before. I'm going to mention it again. Futurecast is going to be it's going to be a panel where you can go in there after you've done all your modifications. You go in there, you select something that you want to check. So let's say you want to check how your experience, your changes to the experience base and factor values for the player have affected the leveling. So what you would do is you go in here and you would select player level curve, or player. It'll say player something to indicate the player's CXP next level changes, and then it'll show you a list of 1 to 10, 50 to 60, and then 150 to 160, and show you the experience, the CXP that will be required to get to that the level after that. So if it's 10, then it's to get to 11, and so on and so forth. If you want to see damage, how your changes to the damage values have affected it, you select that, and it'll show you incoming and outgoing damage for various values. If you want to see how your changes to the planetary size ranges has affected the game, you can select that, and it'll show you that kind of information. So you can go in here, look at it, and see just how your changes are going to affect the game without actually having to go into the game, which is one of the annoying things that I found when working on other things that I'm personally been modding. I'd like to be able to go in there and see I'd like to be able to tell what the effect is in the game without actually having to go into the game. Especially when I was doing the Dawn of War 2 mods, the Dawn of War 2 modding that I did. It was really annoying because you'd make some changes and you have to go in and find the specific scenario to cause the series of events to happen, like for item trigger conditions, like if a Dreadnought dies with this piece of armor on it, it's supposed to resurrect and cause an explosion around it. You have to go in and actually make that happen to test it. So that's kind of a bad example because that's something that you'd really have to do that to test. But things like just seeing how the different values are impacting how the player will play the game or how the player will experience the gameplay. That's what this will show you. So now let's go talk about the Excel thing. I've actually gotten some more stuff done on it, kind of, sort of. I'm actually in the process of trying to figure out how to make these chart ranges be linked to the linked what's in the actual data, because like this, for example, this should look like this, not with a curve, but like how it is on the bottom here, and how the top is kind of nearer to where the top of this is. That's what this should be like, and it's not, because we have it set from 0 instead of the somewhere near the base value. So I'm looking at how to make that automatic, but one thing I managed to do was I managed to figure out how to get this to not have to copy paste it and change it to a value over here. You can now go in and change this, and it'll update automatically. Boom. And the way I did that was by just using a value, then the value function passing the getCXP function field to it to get the value, which then works with these perfectly. So now you have a little bit more of a easier way to check how changes would affect, say, these EXP curves here. So that's really all I have to show. And that, let's see, what do we end up at? 26 minutes, 30 minutes almost. So that's pretty good compared to the last one. Nothing to show for the game coding, because I haven't done anything. Nothing for UE4, like I said before. Nothing for audio or lore or anything. Well, I guess actually for the lore, there is. I guess I could show you. It's just lore. It's not like going to be really flashy or anything, but. Let me close all these. So, let's see. Maybe it's not in here. Maybe it's in the. I don't think I put it over here. It's probably in the Word file for it. So let me bring up Word. At least I think it is. Should be. Yeah, here we go. Intersystem War. So, I'm creating a new. There's a new kind of thing I'm working on for a new lore item I'm working on for before the formation of the United Earth Alliance. So back when it was still the Federation, and then this is even actually before even the birth of the Outer Rim planets. This is like back when they were still in just within colonization, just within the Sol system, and it's essentially detailing out a war between Earth, the Moon, and Mars, as well as different various human colonies in the asteroid belt. I am lifting a little bit of the kind of ideas, I guess. Not ideas, but the overall kind of tensions and things like that. Kind of, I guess, place setting, if you will, from The Expanse a little bit. Not much, but a little bit. For this, but yeah, so basically it's just detailing a war between, well, a Cold War, and then a Cold War turning into a hot war between Earth and Mars, with everybody else getting caught in the middle, essentially, because of a terrorist organization that would later become the what is the first was what's the name of that damn terrorist organization? First Order, I think. Not First Order. That's something else. I think that sounds called the First Order. So if it is, that would be really interesting because, let's see. I can go. I don't need this number. So let's go to the. Let's go to the wiki. The wiki is life. Category. Is there anything game lore? Might be. Yeah, I broke the wiki page. Wow, what the hell? That's interesting. I have no clue what the hell happened there. I think it's underneath races, and then New Age. That's what it's, the New Age. That Trinos organization eventually becomes New Age. I forget what I called it. I haven't actually worked on this for a while. Yellowfang? Earth. Last group. Red Wasps. Damn. LLR, where's the... Oh, Lunar Liberation Regiment, that's what it was. So this extremist group called the Lunar Liberation Regiment takes over essentially all the rest of the Earth Resistance groups, and then that's what comes from that is eventually going to be the that other group, the New Age faction of the Earth Alliance Empire, Broadloom. But yeah, so it's just like a really interesting thing that I'm working on with this. There's going to be a lot of lore, because I want to fill in as much of the history as possible for all the different races. Just starting with the Terrans, mainly because it's a little bit easier to write for them, because a lot of the other races I still haven't really gotten my mind around the various contours of them yet, in terms of like how to handle the fact, like, a lot of the races are going to have a backstory, but at the same time they're not all going to be that interesting. Like, for example, for the most part, well, I guess not really necessarily, it's just the what the hell are their names? The Telvari are the only ones that haven't had interspecies wars. So for all these different races, I have to go through and kind of work backwards from what I have on their descriptions, so kind of the next most complete, I guess, in that regard, because I kind of have an idea of what their civilization is like. But like the Procol, Visor, Adent, and the Grazer, the Grazer are a little bit more as well. But for like these three here, I have to like go back through and figure out exactly like the different cultural aspects before they unified, and each race unified within its own context. The Adent are going to be the most interesting to work on, because right now they're described as non-corporeal entities that have kind of ascended to a being of pure existence of pure energy. So eventually, what will have to happen is I'll have to go back through and work on the history through that whole process where they learned about this evolutionary kind of ascension, and what their culture and race was like before that happened. So still a lot of work to do on the backstory, the lore for these races. Essentially, my goal is to have at least 10,000 words of lore for each race. At the very least. That's like my bare minimum. I'm going to try and get maybe around 20 to 30 pages total of lore for every race. That would be my preferred amount. To the point, at that point, I would say that the race history is fairly well documented at that point. But that's going to be something I'll have to work on as we go through this process. So that's going to be it, though, for this segment of the developer's vlog. The next segment, I'll have completed the modding tool probably, or gotten it near complete. I'll probably have some work on the game too, as well as maybe some stuff for Unreal Engine, maybe some stuff for audio, but we'll have to see. Hopefully that won't be so soon. I'm going to plan it to be sometime probably around mid-November, so when I'll do that. So we'll see what happens then. But thanks for watching. Comments, questions, leave below. And if you haven't done so already, would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel, let you stay up to date on what's going on with the game, and I will see you in sometime in November. Hi everyone, this is George Williams from Lifeman Productions Squared, and we're here tonight to continue our developer's vlog for Odyssey Void, developer's vlog 20 for Odyssey Void. Let me get some of the stuff out of the way here. Let's minimize that. This. Gotten back into Scrapes recently. Finally got some code that was able to do multi-rooming, which was cool. But like The Sims 3, that game just is addictive to me, and I'll play it for a very long time without stopping. So, this is kind of an interim between the next full recording for this and the previous one. I just want to do an intermediate one. Just kind of show off some things that I've worked on that have had a very huge impact on the code base. I'm going to save this. So, one thing, actually I'll save it all. So one thing I went to do recently was to start, because I was done with planets, I was done with redoing the asteroid belt creation, plugging in the new settings stuff for that, and then also refactoring the existing code from before into this one, making it smaller, like I mentioned before. I want to move on to moons next, is what I wanted to do. That and stations. I want to start with moons, though, because that's kind of in the same vein of what I was doing already. Because of moons will have ore deposits on them that you can mine, so that makes them fairly similar to asteroids in that way. So since I already been working on that code, it was fresh in my mind, so I want to start with that. Whereas stations will be something different entirely. But as I was working on it, I was going through and looking at the I had to create a whole bunch of settings for it. Like everything else, it required about 1 billion settings. If you remember that comment in the moon header file, settings hell, somewhere down here. Let's make this bigger and this smaller. Yeah, settings hell. And so there was like something like, I want to say 70 or 80 different settings for just the moon stuff. The way that I had them done to match how they were got this fan out in the other room, the main room. That's pretty freaking old. I'm not sure how old. I'm pretty sure the people that are renting this place before me never used it, and I have been using it now for the past couple months straight because I usually like to keep that room pretty cool. And I think there's a bunch of dust or something in the motor because it started to actually make weird grinding noises that every once in a while get loud enough that you can hear in here. Thought something had fallen over in my room, but it was that thing making a huge loud noise. Anyway, so I was looking at it, trying to figure out a way to say, we got all this stuff here, do we really need it, or how can we make it smaller? And it kind of hit me, well, we got these ranges, and for each of these ranges we have 2 settings. What if we combine it into one setting, and figured out a way in the code to make that easier to handle in terms of not having to do too much with it? And so that was really the goal. So what happened was I took those 60 whatever settings and turned them down to whatever this is. Well, actually, yeah, I do have it saved as a different file. I don't have it open right now. No, where are you? I know where they're at. They're on C. What did I hit? Settings? Oh, C settings doesn't exist. Whoops. C games, LMP games. Just in void. No, they're not here either. Crap. It's documents. Visual Studio 17, I think. I think it's 17. I guess we'll find out. I think it's underneath Mod Tool, though, for some stupid reason. No, it's not Mod Tool. It is underneath. Okay. No. Damn, how did that get selected? OVSC, settings, new. Damn it, where did they go? It's always so annoying because this... I cannot get TextPad to save things in the right places. It gets really frigging annoying, and then they end up in some weird place because... oh, Jesus Christ. Maybe 2015. No, not there. No, it's here frickin' somewhere. Ah, here we go. New settings. New settings, I think, yeah. So I took those, I don't know, however many, what do we have here now? So whatever it was double this. Okay, no, we have 88 settings. So it was somewhere around, I guess, 120. And we called it down to 88. And I'll get into the rest of this stuff later. And the reason for that is because of these whole, taking these ranges and making them just min-max, just combining the ranges together into one setting, comma, separated string. And what I did with that then is I said, okay, well, I need to go through and update the wiki page for all these new settings anyway. Why don't I just redo every setting in the settings table this way, save a lot of space. So that's what the other one was for, the settings refresh or whatever it was called. Yeah, this. So this is a list of all the settings in the game that we have right now, put into groups if there was a range, put into this kind of group thing, and called just whatever rand range or whatever, instead of rand min max or whatever that was before. So it's like that for everything now. And I have to tell you, it got a lot easier to handle things. This is all the settings now, including the moon stuff. 313 settings. That's smaller than it was, trust me. It was like 409, I think, total before. So not only did I get to go through and shrink the number of settings that we have, I also got to go through and update every freaking thing into the wiki. So now every new setting that's here, well, every existing setting that exists right now is on the wiki site, and you can go look up all that stuff. So now the next piece of this was thinking, okay, now we got all the settings, they're kind of changed, we need to kind of modify things in the code for this. And I thought, there's got to be an easier way to handle these and these weird min-max things that we have to call functions we have to call twice to handle this stuff. And I got to thinking, well, we got this split, we have to figure out how to split the strings and all that and turn them into whatever they need to be. So I was looking at the split string function, which returns vector strings. And I began to thinking, what if we take that string vector, we take the string vector it returns, turn it into what we need it to be, and cast it to whatever values we need for that. So that's where this whole process came in, where I moved that to that split string function over to the util table, and that's how we have this now. So we now have a split to whatever type vector for strings, floats, ints, and ranges. How this works is it's pretty simple in the case of split string, you just pass it to split val. Split val is actually a private namespace function, and it's kind of interesting. You kind of have to do a hacky thing with it. Namespaces, by definition, cannot have anything private in them. It's very annoying. So the way to make something private to the namespace and nothing else is to create an anonymous namespace inside of it. So we actually have a double namespace here. We have the utils namespace inside of there is a namespace that is not named, but you can access it directly. So like you would a private function almost. So we call that split val function, which is in that other namespace, and pass through the val, which is the string that we're passing through to split. Very simple for strings. For floats and everything else, it gets a little more complicated, especially for ranges. And yes, you're right, split into a vector of ranges, or rather into a single range. Probably could do it for a vector as well, though, of ranges if we needed to. So for floats, it's pretty simple. You have two vectors. You have a temp string vector, temp float vector. Pass the passed val to split val, returns the string vector. You iterate through the string vector with a for of loop or for in loop, however, for each loop, whatever you want to call this. And then you push back the current element of the temp string to the temp float and stop it to a float. Then you return the temp float vector to the place it was called. Same thing with int, basically same process except we're doing returning it into an int with stoy. And then we get to ranges. This is kind of interesting because you can have 3 different types of types in a float or in a